So again, it's a very commonly seen, yet unfortunately disappointing workout. So I'd very quickly like to introduce you to my new chair. It's a black plain chair thing, very good, very good. I know what you're thinking, no squeak. And that is because, well, obviously it's a new chair. I wasn't going to get a new chair until I moved, which is hopefully in the next couple of months. But the other one it sent me to the abyss. I'll lean back. Ooh, it's a bit of a squeak. Not again. Anyway, the other one, I was leaning back and I kept going back. Thankfully, this is here, because if it wasn't here, I would still be going back right now. And it was a bit of a shambles. Now I've basically given you the update of my week thus far since Monday, because not a lot's really happened other than the whole chair incident. We're going to talk about some bits and bobs today before we do the video. So obviously everyone's like, oh, TFNL clothing, Harry, what's going on there? TFNL clothing is certainly on the cards. Considering the majority of the TFNL family and TFNL community are from overseas, shipping's a bit of a nightmare. So once I can sort the shipping out, then I can spend more time nailing the supplier and the designs and all those bits and bobs. Speaking of which, the top comment down below, the pinned comment, is asking questions about the clothing, like what kind of designs and stuff you want to see. So please have a read of that and reply to it if you can, and let me know what's occurring, because I need your input so I can create stuff that you actually want. But yeah, the shipping stuff was a nightmare. They're trying to charge people as much for shipping as I would charge for a t-shirt. Not about that life. I'm not here to milk people for money. I want to create high quality stuff that I'm happy with and that you'd be happy with at an affordable price. Obviously TFNL, I do want to create a career out of this one day, but that's going to come from multiple avenues, being YouTube, clothing, all sorts. This channel and this community is built on trust and transparency. If I didn't have those things and we didn't have trust and transparency with each other, this channel wouldn't exist. So why am I ever going to do anything to hinder that or negatively impact that, when essentially without you I wouldn't be here? So I will always be as transparent and honest and open as I possibly can be. So yeah, sorry about the ramble. I should really rename this video TikToks that Ella has sent me, because 90% of these videos, if not all of these videos, have come from Ella. So thank you, I do very much appreciate it. If you have any TikToks or Instagram reels you want to send me and have a look at, I can add them and save them for future lists and videos. I can do so, just ping them across to me at Harry_TFNL on both Instagram and TikTok, then we're laughing. I wasn't actually going to do this till next Thursday, but we're doing it now because I've got so many of them. Very quickly, I'm going to make this really speedy. You know what must be done, and you know what I'm going to ask. If at any point you decide you like the video, please let me know you like the video by dropping a like on the video. 1,250 likes in the first 24 hours is the goal, so if we could reach that, that'd be bloody splendid. If again you decide you actually don't hate me and maybe even borderline tolerate me, please do consider clicking the red button down below and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe also the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, drop it down below for comment question of the week and I shall do so. It's hat time, and obviously I'm going with the bucket hat theme, but it's a bit different because guess what? It's fluffy and cow print. You know what I said in the last video, I am fashion. Please somebody tell me I'm wrong and provide evidence that suggests that I am not fashion. Because this, dare I say it, is not only iconic, could be borderline monumental. This picture of me is going to circulate the internet for millions of years. So we have a collection of Instagram reels and TikToks and all sorts, and the first one is where my arms get tired when doing RDLs. You already know what I'm going to say to this. Try a drop set. How to drop set. If your arms are giving out before your glutes or your hamstrings are when doing an RDL, realistically that is to be expected, because when doing a movement where your grip is also tested, it is likely that your grip in that chain is going to be the weakest link. For that reason, when looking at kind of prioritizing hypertrophy, I would say don't be afraid to strap up. Just buy a cheap pair of wrist straps from the internet anywhere you want. They don't need to be expensive. I think mine cost me like £7 and I bought them 4 or 5 years ago, if not longer than that, and they're still hanging on there for dear life. Why would you want your hamstrings or your glutes to suffer just because your grip is holding them back, sort of thing? Don't be afraid. Honestly, I know people are worried about their grip strength. Oh, what if my grip gets weak? I can tell you now it's probably not going to get any weaker, and if you do want to focus on your grip elsewhere, you can do grip specific movements. A drop set on the other hand, again, your grip is still going to be a limiting factor here. So the thing with the drop set, so the drop set is essentially being described here where you do a movement to, let's say you take it to failure, you drop the weight by, I usually get, let's say 20 to 25%, go again sort of thing. And sure, they do have a time and a place, but I feel like they're often overutilized in programs. I feel like if your goal is purely hypertrophy, you should prioritize just doing standard sets. Sure, if you do want to include them, you certainly can. Just ensure you are staying within the kind of hypertrophy rep range, which I know we've covered many times, being like 5 to 30 reps or so. And also ensure that you aren't, like I said, overutilizing them. Point of view, you prefer doing dumbbell dumbbell press over bench press because it builds your chest better. I actually do very much align with this, and I know you've heard me say it millions of times before when I've said the bench press being with the barbell is overrated for pec development, and that's essentially for a few reasons. The function of the chest, not the pecs, is to bring the humerus, being the upper arm bone, across the body. When you're using a barbell, you're fixed in position, you go down, you come up. Because you are fixed here, that limits how far across the body the humerus can travel. Whereas when you have a dumbbell, you have the additional range of motion to take it across the body and further shorten the pecs. I'm not saying the bench press is a bad movement whatsoever, I'm just saying I think it is overrated. Again, when solely looking at hypertrophy, I think it is a fair argument to say that the dumbbell press is likely better than the barbell bench press for pec hypertrophy. So yeah, I do very much align with this. Using a dumbbell also allows you a bit more freedom of movement with the upper arm. So obviously when you're bench pressing, it's more common to see people more flared out. It's hard to kind of tuck. Whereas with the dumbbell, you are able to tuck down that 45-degree angle, which is kind of the angle you want to be pressing from. Very similar to what this individual is doing here. Ideally, I would go lower personally because you are very much working the pecs in their lengthened position here. So you want to really utilize that range of motion and go as low as you can comfortably. If this is as low as this individual can go, then sure, he's smashing it. The pec fibers kind of run in a line at 45 degrees, therefore it makes sense to press at that 45-degree angle to best align with the pec fibers. Jen Selter, somebody I haven't seen for years. Back when I started fitness, I mean 10 years ago or so, she was the name of the fitness world. When you're doing like that kind of standing chest press there, you would often associate like a pressing movement, horizontally anyway, to be more pec dominant, but ultimately because of gravity and whatnot, that's very much going to be a shoulder movement where you're kind of testing your anterior delts, but again, it's not particularly an effective one for that. You're just putting them in a very disadvantaged position, when in reality you would either want to do a flat or incline chest press for the pecs, or a vertical shoulder press for the shoulders. It's movements that are all too common in the world that kind of look quite nice, look quite marketable, and a bit like Instagrammable, but the reality is they would very much promote a lot of burning, especially around the anterior delts, thus leading you to believe that you might indeed be working it more effectively than you actually are. But regarding the effectiveness of movement, you've got to look at what are you trying to target, and are you going through a necessary or appropriate range of motion for that musculature. So for example, the shoulders, holding out here is not going to be adequate for the anterior delts. When looking at the abdominal region, something like this leg kick is also not going to be adequate for the abdominal region because you're not reducing the distance between your sternum and your pelvis. Therefore, it's going to be a bit more hip flexor dominant. So again, it's a very commonly seen yet unfortunately disappointing workout. This caused a big debate on TikTok ages ago, and a lot of people have actually asked me about my thoughts on this. This is the worst back attachment, so this individual with a low row or cable row, and he's using the narrow kind of V grip sort of thing. He's now swapped out for a slightly wider version, similar hand positioning, being neutral grip, but just slightly wider. Is it a bad attachment? No, it is not bad. Do you know what I mean? Is it the best? Certainly not. And essentially why that is because when you're looking at placing greater emphasis on the lats here, you want to keep the upper arm close to the body, and you want to kind of pull that elbow and the upper arm back so you're in line with the body. Your hands are going to want to be here. When you're in this position, it's causing a bit of a flare for the upper arms, thus preventing you from fully utilizing the lats and maybe placing the emphasis or sharing the emphasis across additional muscles. When you're close, your arms will typically flare and you may actually limit range of motion a bit, so not go the whole way back. When you're wider, your arms are more tucked in and you can really go back and shorten the lats fully and effectively. Therefore, although the V-grip isn't bad, it's just not the best, and go for a wider alternative that allows you to remain in a neutral grip position is going to be far superior. Also, a big thing I want to note here is when using like any kind of attachment and looking at placing the emphasis on the lats, you want to avoid going overhand. You kind of want to go underhand or neutral. Overhand is not really the best thing for the lats because it does encourage that flare, which then prevents you from fully utilizing the lats. Bicep circuit 3 rounds, 7 external bicep rotations, 7 internal bicep rotations, 7 bicep curls. Great for hitting the biceps from different angles. Do I think this is particularly effective? I'm gonna say no. When you're looking at the biceps, you've got to look at a couple of things. You think bi, you think two, you think sep, you think head. So 2 heads, biceps. You've got the short head and the long head. When you do your bicep movement, you want to either prioritize or place great emphasis on the short head. You do a movement where the arm is a bit more forward, like so, like a spider curl or a preacher curl. And when looking at prioritizing the long head, you want it so the arm and the elbows behind the body, like a cable curl with the cable behind you, or like an incline dumbbell curl. Doing these angles and the external internal rotation is not really going to place additional emphasis on the biceps. It's not going to effectively work them anymore. It might actually end up just putting additional strain on the rotator cuffs. I would just split into 3 movements. In front of the body for the short head, behind the body for the long head, and a neutral grip hammer curl, so you can get the brachialis in there as well. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that, and I think a lot of people and a lot of content creators and influencers do unfortunately make it more complicated than it needs to be, because again, it doesn't look as cool if you keep it simple yet effective. Shy girl dumbbell only leg day. What's occurring here? Bailey Stewart. Hip thrust, 5 sets. There's a lot of sets of hip thrusts. RDLs, superset with B stance RDLs. Again, there's a lot of RDLs. 4 sets of both. That's a superset as well. Goblet squats, 4 sets. It's a lot of goblet squats. What's it got? Bulgarian splits. You know how vulnerable they make me feel? You know how emotional they make me feel as well? Why you gotta bring them up? Why you gotta do this to me? It's not nice. It's not fair. Ella, you sent this to me. You did this on purpose. Eyes on you. So this individual did actually state on the Instagram post about this workout that it was very much everything to failure. Cool, love to see it. We do love training to failure. And I understand it's a dumbbell only workout. Is that going to prevent you from fully progressing the movement? Because obviously progressive overload is a massive driver when looking at hypertrophy, i.e. doing more and more each time. Getting the dumbbell onto your lap, where the dumbbell sits, is going to potentially limit how heavy you can go with this movement. So you may find yourself outgrowing workouts like this very quickly. 5 sets to failure is a lot, especially if you're doing all 5 sets to failure. I would say it's actually borderline excessive volume. RDL, superset, B stance RDLs. This is not a superset I would personally do, because ultimately you are supersetting 2 RDL variations. The lower back is getting a bit spicy there. So let's say you're doing this for the purpose of the hamstrings. You're supersetting 2 movements that target those hamstrings in the lengthened position. What I would do is I'd probably go like a lying leg curl first to then fatigue the hamstrings in the shortened position before then doing the RDL afterwards to then fatigue the hamstrings in the lengthened position, because muscles do typically fatigue faster in shortened positions than they do lengthened positions. If we are going to keep these movements in, let's make them a bit more effective. So what I would do here is I'd elevate your heels a bit. So just like a platform, no more than an inch. That allows your knees to travel a bit further, so additional knee flexion, which then allows you to lengthen the quads a bit more, whilst also actually finding it easier to hit depth, thus providing some better hypertrophy benefits, again, if your mobility allows you to do so. The lengthened position of the quads, so this bottom portion, is very important, which is why we would elevate the heels to then go lower and lengthen further. Same with the split squat actually. So what I would do here is I'd elevate that front heel, similar amount, like 3/4 of an inch to an inch. I'd also bin off this bench behind you, and I'd maybe elevate your foot with a few plates or like a step up box, so your back foot's about 6 to 8 inches off the ground. Much nicer position to be in. I think you'll find it to be an adjustment that makes this split squat even more effective. It doesn't reduce or change how horrible the movement is and how emotionally scarring and damaging it might be. Elevate heels, reduce the elevation of the back foot, allow a bit more knee travel, so additional knee flexion, again, lengthening the quads a bit further. You're bloody laughing. Oh, this is just a bit of fun. It's the last one. Let's make it a bit of a spicy one. Please don't do this. Making a movement unnecessarily hard and is actually essentially likely reducing the effectiveness of the movement. It's going to limit how much weight you can lift. It's going to put you in a bit of a disadvantaged position. You're getting lower stimulus from potentially additional fatigue. It's not a good time. So I would place this last movement fully in the bin. So when he says, do you agree or disagree, I'm going to say it's a hard disagree, my friend. But like I said, I do really enjoy these videos and I hope you enjoy them too, because with TikToks you can look at loads of different things, a few little sneak peeks and tidbits of information you can take away and hopefully apply to your workouts. When looking at like certain workouts, like for the dumbbell one, for example, although that workout may have not been optimal for hypertrophy, the reason why I tried to keep the movements similar and gave suggestions of how to make some of the movements even more effective is because I fully understand some of you watching this are either training at home and only have access to a dumbbell, or only feel comfortable using dumbbells. How can we make it even better for you whilst considering your equipment allowances and availability, we'll say. So I know it was not an ineffective workout whatsoever. I just think certain movements could have been made better if you are only using a dumbbell, and maybe the volume was a bit excessive. But the training to failure thing was a good one. And it's actually very appropriate and relevant considering the comment question of the week question. Hello is asking, hello. If training to failure in every set could lead to injuries or overtraining? Essentially, the short answer is probably not. Injury is unlikely to occur due to training to failure. Injury is likely going to occur from under recovery, so over fatigue, and also the consideration of form breakdown to the point where it is unsafe. And when we say training to failure, I don't mean go into you can't do any more, then just keep going anyway and throw form out the window. Absolutely not. Let's look at 2 aspects of failure, so being technical failure and muscular failure. Technical failure is when you can no longer maintain optimal effective or safe technique with the movement. Muscular failure is when your muscle physically cannot move anymore regardless of that technique. Technical failure will likely occur first for most people until you kind of ingrain that movement pattern to the point where they start occurring at the same sort of time. Technical failure is still failure. Do not sacrifice safety to get some extra reps, and do not sacrifice your form too much. A little bit of body English here and there, like a slight deviation, is okay, but ideally you want to keep that form as consistent as possible from start to finish. Essentially, you're going through a movement pattern for a reason, to best target and optimize the muscles you're looking to work. If you deviate from that movement pattern, you're looking at actually maybe placing great emphasis on other muscles to help you complete that rep, thus taking the emphasis away from the muscle or muscles you are actually looking to target. So no, training failure will likely not lead to injuries, provided you are still training safely and are not neglecting good technique. And also, no, it likely won't lead to overtraining, provided you are recovering enough. You can consider sleep, volume, protein intake, water intake. You can consider rest days. So many things to consider when looking at like recovery. Overtraining is essentially largely due to under recovery or over fatigue. That's it. That's the video. If at any point you decide you like the video, please let me know you like the video by liking the video. 1250 likes on the video is the goal, so if we reach that, that'll be bloody stupendous and bloody superb. If you haven't already, please do consider clicking the red button down below and the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you two have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, drop it down below for comment question of the week and I shall do so. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for once again tolerating my intense dislike towards split squats and my potentially overly emotional response when they were shown to me. I must apologise. And thank you for tolerating the video.